You knew you also were voting for like a racist, Islamophobic, like anti-Semitic, like misogynistic, transphobic human being who was going to have a lot of power to manifest those like hateful, bigoted values into the world.
Chelsea, I just ask that you do me one favor in this podcast. I want spicy Twitter Chelsea Clinton.
Okay.
Right? That's the Chelsea Clinton that I have. I've always been an admirer of yours, but spicy Twitter Chelsea Clinton is like my favorite Chelsea Clinton. Not to imply that those are two different people.
Thank you. I'll try. I guess it depends on what we talk
Yeah. And I think that is one of the upsides of Twitter. I know there's a lot of downsides, but it does allow people to see a different side of you. Have you found that, I mean, I know you deal with a lot of negative blowback, but have you found that, people are maybe surprised by just how much personality that you show on Twitter versus I think what they perceived you to be because of all these years of public life?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak for kind of how anyone else would perceive me, but I think, I think what's also so clear about like your Twitter feed and with kind of how you use your voice is it is like so authentically you. And I think that is very clear for me. It's also clear like the cadence in which I engage. Like I'm sure that some social media consultant would tell me I should post like 3 times a day at like these times. And like some days I just don't even have the time to like open Twitter because I have 3 kids. And like the other day I realized, oh my gosh, it's like 2:00 and I didn't even do the dishes from breakfast, much less like the dishes from lunch. Like I can listen to the radio, but I don't have time because I don't have like a third like Inspector Gadget arm to be like looking at my phone and trying to see like what's happening on the kind of, conversations on Twitter. So, I do think, I hope that it gives people kind of, a sense in like, I only kind of engage, on things I really care about. But if I don't engage, it's not because I don't care about it. It's just because I may not have had time that day or for a few days to like, look at the little like blue and white app on my phone. So I hope people think, yeah, like that is who she is, but also not like, oh, that's all of who she is.
Is it, I think I just feel this way that we're constantly in an avalanche of, are you fucking kidding me? Like we're constantly in that space. So how do you deal with it? I mean, like you said, that some days just being a mom, you're not able to even open the app or see, I mean, but I'm sure you're keeping abreast of what's going on, but how do you deal with this avalanche of us seemingly going lower and lower and lower? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, well, I think it's also not seemingly, like I think we are going lower and lower and lower. I mean, I had a number of kind of worries, concerns, kind of nightmares harbored in my head, on January 20th, 2017, as President Obama left the White House and President Trump entered. But I didn't have like a global pandemic, like an acceleration of climate change, like the continued desecration of like civil rights, voting rights, like not only the mainstreaming, but like the mainlining of hate against like everyone basically who isn't like a wealthy, white, cisgendered male, like on my, like, oh, here's just how horrific it could be. Like I knew it was going to be a hall of horrors because he told us so much of what he would do. But the collision of like the cruelty and like the bigotry that has so defined him his whole life, like with just the incompetence, I think has been devastating. Clearly, as like we see with hundreds of thousands of Americans dead of COVID-19 and, the fires raging in your area. Like I was speaking to someone who's, without power on the Gulf Coast because of Hurricane Sally there. And just like the federal government is like not where it should be, to put it mildly, to help like the basic, like protect and preserve of human life. And it's because they just don't care.
Well, I mean, clearly your experience is kind of twofold because obviously your mother was his opponent. A lot of the attacks on her, the attacks against your family, it's been that way for a long time. So it didn't just start with Donald Trump. So I don't want to give him that much credit. However, that being said, this is the part I have a hard time managing. Is I have a hard time forgiving the people that thought this was okay. I have a really hard time with that. Is that, you know, I know some people are like, oh, but he condom. And I'm like, I don't know how. Like, I guess I just don't get it. And so I wonder, is there a part of you, because you're so positive and you've written more and spoken a lot about action, about how we go forward, but is it hard for you to not sometimes give in to that resentment toward people who thought that this was acceptable, and honestly, people who still think it's acceptable, because it's a tight race right now between him and Joe Biden?
You know, Jemele, I think it's such a good question. You know, I try to just in general, like, not live in a place of resentment or bitterness, because I just don't think that's a healthy place to be. And like, especially, like when I was like, you know, breastfeeding, I really do believe like our emotions like flow through our milk. And so I felt this like a, you know, particular responsibility to Jasper, our baby. And yet it would be disingenuous to say like, I think there are a lot of people who like don't take responsibility, who do bear responsibility. And, you know, the people who were very transparent about like voting because they wanted a tax cut, okay, but like you knew you also were voting for like a racist, Islamophobic, like anti-Semitic, like misogynistic, transphobic human being who was going to have a lot of power to manifest those like hateful, bigoted values into the world. So that maybe was your motivation, and that may be the story that you tell yourself, but you can't then avoid kind of some responsibility for what has happened, because, okay, I didn't know that he was so grossly going to mismanage a global pandemic and constantly be undermining the CDC and the FDA. Although I'm not terribly surprised, because he's trying to win the next election, and that is kind of the only metric of success he cares about, not like actually saving Americans' lives. But like, he told us that he would try to ban immigrants. Like, he told us that he would cut taxes and like gut the already too small social safety net in our country. Like, he told us repeatedly how he feels about women. So of course it's not surprising that he's tried to restrict a woman's right to choose or women's ability to access healthcare broadly. So like, this was not the writing on the wall. Like, you didn't have to be as maybe engaged as I am. Like, you just had to listen to one or two of his speeches or tune into one of the debates. Like, he told us and showed us like who he is repeatedly in 2015 and 2016.